Welcome back to the podcast. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about all things real estate. We're going to be talking about selecting an agent. We're going to be talking about buying and selling tips, investing, and we're going to be talking about the NAR lawsuit with our special guest.
Wait, you can't tell him before the intro. Roll the intro.
What's up, Eugene? You're listening to the Eugene Morning Hustle podcast, brought to you by the Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce. We're your hosts, Brandon Miller and Ivan Torres, and like us, we know you'd like to know what's going on in your city, socially, economically, civically, and culturally. From events to guest interviews and professional and personal development tips, each week we bring you stories of local business owners, advocates, leaders, and everyday Eugenians, sharing how they've strengthened their roots to reach a little deeper in our community, and how you can too. On today's episode, we have Tim Duncan of Tim Duncan Real Estate. And today, funny enough, we're going to be talking about home buying and selling and everything that goes into that. And so, welcome to the podcast, Tim.
Thank you. Very excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, could you take us back to kind of before real estate and kind of like how you came to be here in Eugene and your connection with the community? And of course, why real estate?
Got it. Yeah. So why I'm here, how I came to be here in Eugene is very simple. I was born here.
Well, that's very simple. Yeah.
Born and raised. Yep. Always lived in Eugene. Grew up, loved the area. I was very competitive at playing tennis when I was growing up. I have 3 older brothers. One of them's in Minneapolis, St. Paul right now. One of them is in Salt Lake City, and then the older brother and the oldest, and I'm the youngest. The oldest and the youngest and I are here, and he's actually a real estate agent in town in another company. But that's how I came to be here. And what was the other question?
Just your how you got into real estate.
Yeah, how I got into real. Okay, I love the community. I love the area. You know, you've got Willamette Pass, an hour and 15 minutes away. I can go high lake fishing, about the same distance. We can go to the coast with the kids, hour and 15 minutes. We can go to the zoo in Roseburg. You know, we do that a bunch. Portland to bigger cities, an hour and a half north. I mean, you just have everything that you need here. And then Eugene is a very cool atmosphere as well. I like the size of the town or of the city. There's stuff to do, enough for us. You know, we have 3 young kids, so there's plenty of stuff for our kids to do. But you still know people, and it still has that small town feel to it, even though I think it's approaching like 400,000 people now. So that's pretty cool. How I came into real estate. All right. So back up, I've been licensed for about 10 and a half, going on 11 years now, but let's back up 11 years. I was a sales rep and a manager at Verizon Wireless at the corporate store on Coburg Road. And I was kind of switching between the Coburg Road store sales and management at remember when Valley River Center had like the kiosk, the Verizon kiosk in it when they did kiosks? So I was the manager of that. And the funny thing is, I've always enjoyed sales, and I've had a just natural ability at it. And I had sold as much as I could sell at the Coburg Road store, and I won't mention any names, but the manager of that store was a drill sergeant for the Army National Guard, and he ran it that way. And so I was the top 3 in sales for the Pacific Northwest for any corporate Verizon employee. And I would consistently, every day I got into work, be told I didn't sell enough, I suck at my job, I'm horrible at what I do, he's going to write me up, he's going to fire me. That's the kind of environment that that company bred at the time. I have no idea what it's like now, but that's what it bred. So I was like, I've got to get out of this. I had recently bought a house. My mom was my realtor. I had a new baby. I think she was like 6 months old. And I was like, I can't do this. And so one of the assistant managers was like, you need to be a manager. And I was like, I just don't think that I have that bone in me, but if it gets me out of this environment with this guy, I will. So I was like a part-time manager there and a part-time sales at Coburg. So anyways, fast forward, I told my manager that was the drill sergeant, I said, hey, I'm getting my real estate license. And he said, you're going to suck. You're going to fail.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, you don't have what it takes. I remember vividly in the back room of the Coburg Road store, the employee only area. He told me that. He said that to my face. It was crazy. I couldn't believe somebody would say something like that, yeah. You know, no matter how confident they were that was true. And it really scared me. Scared the crap out of me that I was making the wrong. You know, he was older than me. He looked better than I did. He was more successful than me in the success measurement that I took. And it really scared me because in cell phone sales, like I needed to sell 100 phones a month. That was really easy. If I sold 90, I was still fine. But I was like, if I move up to homes, I need to sell a home a month. And if I sell 0, I'm screwed. My mortgage isn't getting paid. My baby's not eating. My wife isn't getting paid. Our car's getting towed away. So to me, it was really scary. It's like, hey, if 90 people come into the store, I'm okay. I get 10% off. There's no 10% of one. It's 0. Yeah. And so that was really scary for me. And I came home from work one day when I remember my wife was in our kitchen. I walked home because we lived half a mile away from the Verizon store. And I walked home and I said, I can't do it anymore. I can't do this. I can't do this. I have to quit my job. And I don't remember if she agreed to that or not, but I did the next day. I quit my job and my mom was like, hey, you need to get your real estate license. So I quickly started doing that. I was like, I'm going to jump in both feet. And then when I got my real estate license, I think it was 3 months. And by the way, I probably shouldn't air this, but it took me 8 times to pass the test because I'm not a studier. I'm not an I have ADD and ADHD. I cannot read a book and remember what I'm reading. And so I studied as much as I could for I think 2.5, 3 months. I went and took the test. And at the end of the test, they give you a piece of paper that says you failed, but these are the 8 categories of the test. And here's the percentage that you answered correctly in each category. And I quickly looked at that and noticed okay, 4 of these categories I passed, the other 4 I failed miserably. So I was like, okay, I remember 4 of the questions and it in those categories. So I'm going to study those questions. And so then you have to wait 24 hours or 48 or whatever. And so I came back and took the test again. And I got a little bit better and they gave me the same sheet. And I was like, okay, I know I don't need to study these categories because I passed them. I'm just going to study these 4 that I failed. So I was able to, and this is what I tell people that are getting their license, because by the way, taking the test has nothing to do with real estate. What you learn when you're getting into real estate is law from 1876. What is a homestead? I have no freaking clue what the word homestead actually means. I don't think it matters.
Wow.
None of it matters. It is a bar to restrict the amount of people that get licensed, set by the National Association of Realtors. I think it's one of the biggest lobbyist groups in America, so that real estate agent community stays smaller than if it was super easy to get your license. So for example, I recently became CCB'd. I'm not a licensed CCB anymore. I'm not operating that company. But to get your CCB, it is an open book test. You pay $30 for the book. You take the test. It is recorded in PSI or whatever. But it's an open book test. It's very easy to get the test. How many contractors do you know? Everybody, right? You know a lot of realtors, but it's probably a little bit smaller than contractors. So anyways, I got my license and was like, hey, you know what? This is a part-time gig, what everybody thinks, right? I can do this part-time, this is no big deal. I'll show some houses when my friend, you call me and you're like, hey bro, I want to see this house. I'm like, cool. What time? And you tell me and we go and it's all going to be great. Well, I was like, hey, I have really a lot of experience working at Verizon. There's a retailer in Eugene I worked for before and they were like, hey, we'll hire you on part-time. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I can pay my mortgage. I can my kids can eat, my wife can eat. And so I got a part-time job there. And I remember coming to work, I think it was the first day. I had worked there previously, a couple years back. Okay. So I knew everybody there and the owners and whatnot. And when I got to work the first day, I think I was 2 minutes late because I had just showed a house and I got written up for being 2 minutes late. And I was like, gosh, is this going to work out? Is this going to work out? And so I didn't stay there very long because somebody had asked me to see a house. And I said, hey, I'm working that time from 4 to 9 p.m. I can't show it to you at that time, but I can show it to you tomorrow. And I swear to you, what they said was, I'm going to find somebody that's available. That was the last shift I worked. Yeah. I got it. It clicked on me. I was like, oh my gosh, this will never go beyond what I'm at right now unless I'm both feet in it. So I quit my job. I told my wife it was the scariest thing. I swear to you, it was the scariest thing I've ever done. Quit my job, got into real estate full time. First year was unbelievably hard. First year was unbelievable. I think I cried more that I'm not even kidding you, legitimately cried to my mom of all people, because she kind of got me in and we were offices next door at Windermere and she got me in and cried to her, and my wife was like, I can't do this. It's not going to work. I'm not made for this. The first year when I got in was 2014. So the market was deciding if it was going to recover or not. obviously looking back, we see that it did a very good job recovering. But that year, it was like everything I did, everybody was like, hey, I'm going to sell my house next year, or I'm going to buy next year, or why don't you show me 50 houses, but I have no intention of buying this year. So I was like wasting a ton of time. And like, I feel like what I was doing is like putting all these people into this like system and like, okay, you want to buy in 12 months, you want to buy in 15, cool. I did a really good job of freaking recording when you wanted to buy or sell, and doggone it, did I follow up with you every 3 months? And the next year, like everybody did everything. Like I think I had like 4 houses on the market at the end of 2014. And it was, I'm pretty darn sure it was like January 3rd, like everything sold within a week. And I had like the best month I've ever had in my life.
You were planting those seeds.
Yeah. I planted a ton of seeds the first year. And it was like, I don't know if you guys have ever heard like Mark Cuban talk about starting a business, or more popularly, Elon Musk talk about like starting a business. He's like, I don't recommend that you do it. Like everything that he says in that is exactly accurate. Like, I don't think that you should, like, he wants to discourage people so far to where if you have no determination and grit to get it done, and you don't have a reason you're doing it, you're not going to be successful. And the reason that I've been successful is because I had this thing that like my wife needed to eat. My mortgage was not going to be, I had a brand new house. Like I couldn't not pay the rent. Like the mortgage, my house would have foreclosed. I had no choice. And that's what I tell people when they get in the business. I'm like, why are you doing it? They're like, I like helping people. I'm like, well, it's not enough. Like you don't like helping people when they're an asshole to you. I don't know if I can say that, but you don't like doing it when they won't give you straight answers, when they don't return your phone calls, they don't respond to your text messages, and then they get upset with you because you're not checking in with them. Or like they're under contract and there's this timeline and they're going to lose money, and you care more about the money that they're going to lose than they do because they won't call you back. Or their house is on the market and it's overpriced and they won't reduce the price, but it's your fault it's not selling. Like, do you still care about people and helping them? Do you still want to help? You probably don't. And so those are the hard ones to get through, but you've got to have something more like, there's nothing else for me. Like, I'm not going to go back to a 9 to 5. I will not do it. My kids will not eat. If I don't sell something today, we don't eat. And so to me, it was that. It was like, I jumped around early in my professional career. Like I would say that is like graduating high school, because college was not for me. So I went from like job to job, and I'd go to a job and work there for a week and be like, nope, this isn't it. I ain't here. This is not for me. And I quit. And my dad hated it. I think I had like 9 or 10 jobs in like 6 months. And then I landed at like this sales job selling printers at Office Depot on Chad Drive and Coburg Road and Crescent. You know what I'm talking about there? And I sold more printers in a month than anybody else had sold in a year.
Yeah, that's so funny.
And I was like, whoa. And then my buddy was like working at Verizon. And this must have been, I was like 20 or 23 or something like that. And he was the bad dog working at Verizon, dude. He was working at Costco. Working at Costco, like, how do you get into Costco? Like, you can't get fired, you know? And like, they pay really good. And so it was kind of a God thing that I didn't get this job, because my buddies, that guy that worked there, his dad was best friends with the general manager. And so my buddy's dad told me, he's like, hey, if you just go in an interview, you'll get the job. Like, you can't screw it up. So I went in and interviewed, and I didn't get the job. They wouldn't tell me why, but they were like, yeah, he's not getting the job. And then I tried Symantec, you know, when everybody was on this like Symantec kick, and it was like the coolest place to work. And like I interviewed 3 different times for 3 different positions, and all the managers were like, yeah, it's either something on his resume or something he's saying in the interview, like, we're not hiring him. And like, I was beating down doors that were not going to be open for me. And like, there is a reason why. And then fast forward, I'm in real estate and like working for myself, and I have people that work for me, and like, I get to provide for them, and I get to help people buy and sell houses. And sometimes it's not fun, and sometimes we do a great job and the customer knows it. And sometimes we work our tails off and they don't see the fruit of it, and they just don't think it's worth it. And, you know, and that's what happens. But, you know, I've been doing it for almost 11 years now, and it doesn't matter what would happen. I don't think I could do it. Some days I'm like, I'm done. I hate this. Like, my team can have it. I'm over it. But like, the majority, like the freedom that it provides, like I can be here with you guys at 2:00 on a Friday, and like everything's fine. You know, my wife gets to stay home with my kids. My kids are in private school. Like, we have the house that we want to live in forever. Like, everything is taken care of, you know, because I can make as much as I want to make or work as little as I want to work, but you can't have both. unless you're really, really, really freaking good at leveraging other people and employees. So that's probably more that you wanted to go into on that.
Well, honestly, I feel like what you just did is you just inspired a bunch of people to really take a hard look at starting a business and get real with themselves about it. Yeah, I mean, heck, you just inspired me. I'm like, hell yeah, man, I'm gonna start another business. So
I'm gonna get my license.
Yeah, no, like it, you get what you put out of it,
right?
Or what you put into it. And what I would tell people, like, I have a lot of friends that were like, hey, I want to get my real estate license. And I'm like, great, that's really good. Why don't you like come work with me and I'll teach you? And then I show them what, like, we had this agent that came to my office, like she sold my wedding ring to me. Like I've had like 8 of these because I lose them. So I go back to the store and like buy wedding rings, and she got fired and called me and was like, I'm gonna come work for you. I was like, cool, get your license. She came to work for me and I said, hey, everybody in your phone needs to go in a database on Excel. That's before you make any phone calls, before you make any sales. I don't want you doing nothing until you do this. She couldn't do it. And I was like, hey, I don't, and it was, and so she finally did a couple of them, I think. And I was like, you need to call every single person that you know and just tell them you're in real estate and see how they're doing. And like, you're not doing that to get a lead. You're doing that just so they are top of mind, because they will probably buy and sell a house without you in the next 12 months. And it will hurt like hell. And you will be mad at them and it will hurt. And it will take you a long time to figure out that you don't need their business. You just need like word of mouth. And she ended up leaving my company because for different reasons, but I was like, man, like what she wanted to go over 20 different options of writing an offer, strategies, and without a client. I was like, why does it matter? You don't have a client to write the offer. Let's find the client and then write the offer the client wants to write. Like there's 1,000 different ways, like doing 20, like go find the client. And it didn't resonate with her. And she left and went somewhere else that she thought was a better fit, which was totally fine. I had no hard feelings or anything like that. But I was like, man, she didn't get it. She didn't get it. She needed someone that wanted to buy or sell a house. And then I wanted her to come back and be like, I don't know what to do. This person wants to sign up, but I have no idea what to do. I'm like, that's awesome. Here's how you do it. Let's talk to the person. Let's get them signed up. Then you can really help.
I think you hit on a really good point here, is that, a lot of times people say, or they used to say, it's about, it's what you know, or it's who you know, not what you know. But really what it is, especially in what you're doing, is that it's about who knows you.
Mm-hmm. That's
right?
so good. That's so good. I've heard that before. And that is so freaking good.
Because it makes sense, right? I mean, especially in something like that, when you're your own business, and it's like it's about who knows you.
Yeah, we've really switched into, like, right now we have a full-blown, like, all of our assets, 80% of like our marketing and what we're doing is going into social media. We went to this conference and the guy, his name's Neil Holm. He's freaking fire. He's a lender in Vegas, actually. You guys should follow him. Neil Holm, Neel Holm. Guy's unbelievable. But he came up and he said that. He goes, hey, it used to be like who you know, but now with social media and everything, it has changed to who knows you and how many people know you. Right. So it's like leveraging social media and like podcasts and like these kind of things. It's like the more you can get your message out there, the more likely that you're going to have to be successful at what you're doing. And you just freaking nailed it right there.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, this is great. I feel like this kind of lays the groundwork to what we're about to dive into, which is about, when is the right time to buy or sell a home?
Oh, man.
So is there a right time? I mean, we know that there's people out there watching the market and all that kind of jazz.
Yes. A couple different scenarios come to mind there. But yes, there is a right time. And not to keep you hanging, the right time is when you're ready. So nobody knows. Do you know what the interest rate market is going to do?
I don't.
Can 6 months from now, do you know what interest rates are going to be?
I don't.
I have a client that once told me, this was actually last year, he wanted me to list a house. And then I went through the process and we were just about ready to sign the papers and get the house on the market. And he texted me, hey, my buddy said interest rates are going to drop in 6 months, so I'm going to wait. And this was, so right now it's September. I mean, this must have been like January. And everybody thought rates were going to drop, but he said, my friends know interest rates are going to drop in June. And I just was like, okay, like, who am I to tell you that your friends are wrong? But like, nobody knows, like, the feds don't even know. Like, the guys dropping rates don't even know. And so anyways, he ended up selling his house 6 months later. But sure enough, guess what? In June, rates didn't drop. So, and my entire career, by the way, I've had people every realtor will tell you this, but like, you talk to a buyer, they come to an open house or whatever, and they're like, yeah, I'm waiting for the market to crash. They're still waiting. Right. It's been 11 years. They're still waiting. Yeah. Had they bought a house in the beginning of those 11 years, they actually would have, I think, tripled their home value than if they bought right now. So like just to give you an example, I bought a house. My first house I ever bought was, must have been in like 2013 or something like that, right before I got licensed. I paid $205,000 for it. 5 years later, I sold it for $305,000. I checked the MLS right now because I regret selling that house. I think it's worth $600,000, and that's not like an aggressive number. It's probably worth like $550,000 to $650,000. So if you wait, you lose money. Like, this is kind of going to be an unpopular opinion, but I think, like, when I talk to people that are like, yeah, I want to time the market, or I want to buy when prices are at the bottom. Well, like, how the heck do you know when prices are at the bottom? They might be dropping, and you know what? Like, greed is like the worst thing in the world. So like, when prices are going down, you always think they're going to keep going down, and then when they tick up a little bit, you think, oh, it's just a tick. They're going to go further down, man. They're going to go further down. It's never based on data or anything that actually matters. But what I tell people, I'm like, hey, when I would rather the housing market, like when I'm talking about single family houses that you live in, not investment property, this advice is different. But for houses that you live in, I would rather the market crashes the day after I buy the house than the day before I buy the house. Okay, the reason is it takes about 2 to 5 years for markets to correct. Homeowners in America own their home for 4 to 7 years, and it's probably shorter now. Most people, I have a lot of people that we sold houses to in 21, 22, and even 23 that are selling their houses or getting ready to sell their houses. So I would say that, I bet that demographic of like 4 to 7 years for home ownership is actually less. So what happens is, if you buy your house and the market crashes later, let's say it crashes in a year, well, you can't sell your house for the price that you paid for it or more for 4 to 7 years, 4 to 5 years, whatever it takes for the market to correct. That means you have to stay in the house that period of time. But if the market crashes, I mean, obviously, if you time the market, for the audience out there, if you time the market perfectly and you bought at the very bottom of the market, that would be the ideal situation. Sure. But it's unrealistic to expect that you're going to do that. So if the market was to crash the day after I bought the house, I will be able to move in the soonest period of time, like sell and buy a bigger house or downsize or move across the country or take that job transfer or, whatever. So if the market crashes the day after you buy the house, the market's going to be recovered faster than if the market crashes a year or 2 years after you buy your house. Right. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. Given if we could time the market perfectly, obviously, just for the listeners out there, that would be the most ideal scenario, but we can't. And so, like, if I bought a house and the market crashed, why do I care? I'm not selling, my mortgage isn't changing. I probably can refinance it for a lower rate. But my mortgage isn't changing. I'm not selling it in 1, 2, 3, or 4 years, hopefully, like ideally. So like, why does it matter if the value of my house drops when I'm not looking to get the equity out of it?
Right.
But now if I'm buying investment property, obviously, like, I want to get the best deal I can, but that's a different story. I just look at, I'm young, I'm still working. I think I'm young, but I'll buy any property that cash flows right now. I don't need monthly income. I'm still working. I will buy any property that cash flows as long as it doesn't need any influx of cash like right away. So I don't care what the market's doing. If it's at the top of the market, if the rents pay the mortgage and property taxes and insurance and property management fees, vacancy rate and fix-ups, I will buy the property. And usually it ends up making $50. I've got one that I pay $300 a month for right now because a tenant moved out and it was a crappy time to rent it, so it ended up renting for $300 a month less. But we've got other ones that we make $1,000 a month on. So and then after a couple of, this isn't really part of like what your question was, but
we're getting there.
This is what's really cool about investment real estate. Yeah, this is like insane. So this is cheating. Like, I don't know why the IRS, like, this is legal from what I understand, talking to my CPA and everything. So you buy a property. I bought a property for $205,000 2 years ago. I paid cash for it because it was not financeable. And just so you guys know, it doesn't mean I had $205,000 cash laying around in a checking account. I leveraged an investment account, like a 401k or something like that, and I borrowed against it. So I think a lot of people, when they hear cash, they think it's like people have millions of dollars. They don't. Nobody does. That's stupid. They have it all invested. They borrow against assets.
Yeah.
So I borrowed against an asset to pay $205,000 for this property in Springfield. It cost me $150,000 to fix it up. So I was total investment at $350-ish, right? We got a tenant in there. The tenant was $2,500 a month. This is the one I was telling you I'm paying $300 a month for, and I'll explain to you why I'm willing to lose money on it. So we were into it $350. We had a tenant paying $2,500 a month. Then I called my lender and I said, hey, I want to take all my money out of this property. I want my $350 back. She gave me a loan for, I think it was $350, but it had to appraise. I had to have 20% equity because it's a single family house. So it was like $400 or $425, whatever. I have my $350,000 back, and I own the house. Like, why would we ever sell it? And so like the rent, I'm paying $297 or whatever a month in rent. So that's why I'm willing to do that, because I have my down payment, my reinvestment back. I have everything back. I have the house for free. And like the rent will go up on an annual basis. Like, it's fine. So it will get back to there. And the previous tenant, I made like $200 or $300 a month on it. So for a year. So I'm like, that's what's like not fair or doesn't make sense to me, is I can own this property free. And I don't think the public knows this. I can own this property for free and clear. I can refinance it after 12 months, take all my money back out of it. I'm making money on a monthly basis in a normal situation. And like my great grandkids will never sell this house. Like, why would we ever sell it? In 30 years from now, I bought it. It's supposedly worth $450. Markets generally double every 7 to 10 years. Real estate markets do. So like 30 years from now, it's going to double and double again. So it's going to be 800, and then it's going to be 1.6, and it will be paid off. I will have 1.6 million on this single family house in Springfield that I rent, and it'll be 1.6 million. Plus it's paid off. Plus I'm making money on a monthly basis. At that point, I'll be making, who knows what rent's going to be, $6,000 a month for that house. You know, if they double every 10 years. How to choose an agent. So everybody has a different opinion on there. Like, they need to negotiate better, or they need to be better communicators, or you need to take a referral from somebody that you know. You need to Google them. You need to look at the reviews and everything like that. But I think there's errors in all that kind of stuff, because somebody might be a really great communicator, but they just don't know how to negotiate. They don't know contracts. Like, would you really want them like writing the biggest contract of your life? Where I go is, whenever I'm looking for whatever I'm looking for, a service or something like that, like, I want the person that is the most passionate about what they're doing. So if I want a videographer, for example, like, I'm going to look for the guy that just freaking loves what he does every day and geeks out on like videos, and like isn't satisfied until like that video is like edited 60 different times and it's the best video it could be. That's the guy I want.
That's Ivan, just so you know.
Yeah, and that's Ivan. So like, and Ivan is probably going to charge a premium because he knows what his worth is, but the premium is not that much more than the standard. So you get like 10 times more value for like 2 times the money. And so I think in real estate, for example, it is being commoditized right now with this NAR lawsuit and stuff like that. We'll talk about that later. But basically, like, there's dollar signs being put on our heads on like what we're worth and what we should be charging. But like, if I was looking for a real estate agent and I was not a realtor, I would look for somebody that is like, doesn't necessarily need to be the best. Maybe they don't want to do as much business as somebody else, or they don't want to scale and volume and hire and all that stuff. I'd look for somebody that I can tell is like really, really, really interested in what they're doing. Like, they love what they do and they want to help, and they want to, whether they like you or not, they want to make the experience as good as possible. Notice how I said whether they like you or not, because in real estate, when you're buying and selling houses, sometimes clients hate their agents and agents hate their clients. That does happen for a period of time. So you want to know that whether they like you or not that day, they're still going to show up and do their job for you as good as they would for somebody else or for you on the day one. So I would look for somebody that is really, really passionate. And unfortunately, I don't think that's as common as it sounds, but you can figure out passion a couple different ways. I think it's one, being very educated, right? Spending time and investing time and money into education and understanding contracts and having a lot of experience. If you have a ton of experience, you probably have a lot of grit and are sticking with it, and you probably know a little bit more. It also can be how often you're willing to communicate. If you don't want to communicate very often, you may not be really that interested in what you do. So that can be frustrating. But I think passion answers a ton of questions that other people say to look for. And like passion kind of just includes all of it. Like if you're passionate about what you're doing, you're probably going to pick up your phone. If you're passionate about what you're doing, you probably know contracts pretty well. If you're passionate about what you're doing, you probably know what houses sell for in this area or that area, or what school districts are the best, and where the best ice cream is, and where you can go on walks for, and where the hikes. You probably know all that kind of stuff. And if you're really passionate about what you do, you probably helped a couple people, because it takes a little bit of time to gain your passion. Like, right? It's not always fun right at the beginning. You have to have some success in your career to really love it. Like if it's not successful and we didn't make money and get to take Fridays off sometimes and hang out with our families, we wouldn't do it. And so in the beginning years, it's like, I don't know, 8 days a week, 380 days a year. It's just a lot. So like it's hard to be passionate up front, but like once you're successful and you have some time under your belt and some success under your belt, then you can start to be like, hey, I really feel like I have something to give. And, I really think I can benefit people, and here's how I'm going to do it.
We were talking about what are some questions that new buyers can ask an agent to kind of vet them and find out if they're going to fit them, right? What are some questions that they can ask and say, because when you're new to buying a home, you don't know anything normally. Yeah. And so it's like, how do I know that I'm asking the right questions to find out if this agent is good for me or not?
Yeah. Well, first, in order to find out if they're good for you, you need to know what you're looking for. So like, you've got to know, like, I ask every customer that comes to my office, I say, hey, what is the most important thing in a realtor for you? I want to know what they say. Like, what are you looking for in a realtor? Some people say somebody that can sell my house for the highest price. Some people say really good communication. One guy recently said somebody that gets stuff done. I was like, oh, okay, well, at least now I know the target. Like, I know if I'm going to be able to fit that or not. But the point of this is, you've got to know what you're looking for before you look for it. Otherwise, you're never going to find what you're looking for.
Oh, I think that's so smart.
Yeah. And so it's different for each individual person. But if you know what you're looking for, I think just be like transparent. Now, some general questions that I think are good for somebody, whether they're buying or selling. Like if you're buying a house, I'd say, I would want to know how many buyers have you represented successfully in the last 12 months? If I'm selling, how many listings have you successfully sold in the last 12 months? What was your marketing plan for that? How did you sell those houses? What marketing pieces did you send out? Was it word of mouth? Did you send out postcards? Did you do social media advertisements, Google, Bing, all those kind of things? Did you put it in a magazine, register guard? What is it? For buying, like, hey, are you going to like canvas neighborhoods for me? If I tell you like a neighborhood that I want to be in, are you going to send out postcards or go door knocking? So like there's marketing aspects for both buyers and sellers, especially in a low inventory market like we're in right now. So one thing that we try to discover for our clients when we have buyers specifically come to our office, if they are looking for something that's difficult to find, or there's not much of it on the market, or it's like one comes on every 6 months. Well, we don't want to wait 6 months to sell them a house. They don't want to wait 6 months to buy a house. If they're here, they want to buy now, whether they say it or not. They want to. People don't like to wait around. So we ask them like, hey, are there any specific neighborhoods, like geographical neighborhoods? Sometimes they say a school district, or sometimes they say like this neighborhood in Springfield, or this one in Eugene, or Junction City, or whatever. And so we'll say, okay, great. So then we try and narrow down like their search criteria. And anyways, once we get all that narrowed down, we'll send out targeted mailers that we have a buyer looking in this area around this price point for this thing. And the cool thing is we have programs that will only send it to the houses that match their criteria.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And then if, I've gone door knocking. Just last year, we had a buyer that said, I have to live on these 2 streets. One of the houses on these 2 streets will be mine. Go find me one. I went and knocked on a bunch of doors, and sure enough, we sold him a house.
Wow.
Yeah. He closed like 30 days after that.
So what does that conversation look like? Like, hey.
I say, I mean, this particular buyer was looking to spend $1 to $1.5 million. And so the neighborhood, I knew the neighborhood pretty well. And so I just knocked on doors and said, hey, not asking you if you want to sell, because that's very, intrusive.
Yeah, right.
Hey, do you want to sell your house? It's kind of aggressive.
Yeah.
So I learned early on, you don't ask people directly. I just, hey, I have a buyer that's approved for $1 to $1.5 million. Wants to live on these 2 streets. So it has to be one of these 2 streets. He's looking for no less than 3,000 square feet, 4-bed house, with like a nice big backyard. Do you or anyone, do you know anybody on these 2 streets that would be interested in selling?
Oh, that's great.
And then they're obviously going to think of, well, I mean, 2 people told me like, well, I would sell. Like, cool. Can I come in and take a look at your house? And then from there, it's just like, yeah, great. What do you want for your house? Because I'm not representing them. So I'm just saying, hey, what would you like for your house? And they tell me, and it's either ridiculous or realistic. And I'm like, oh, we might have something here. The house that he bought was a 3rd property that I knew the person. And so I was like, crap, I forgot that he lived on the street. So then I called him up, and sure enough, he wanted to sell his house, and we ended up closing it. So
wow, that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not every client, of course, but it does. For sure. I mean, it worked.
But that shows kind of some hustle for sure, man.
Yeah.
Like you're getting out there knocking on doors.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
the postcard thing works too. We had a client that wanted to live in Pleasant Hill and had like specific square footage of like land that they needed. That was the biggest factor for them, and we sent out a postcard, I think, to like 300 or 400 people that met that criteria from the county records, and like 4 of them called us back and were like, we'd consider selling. So I went out and met with them. That one didn't work. Those people ended up buying a completely different location, believe it or not. But I mean, people do respond to that kind of stuff. So and sometimes they just don't want to put it on the market. It could be a little tricky to figure out because they know you're working for the buyer. So sometimes they want to go hire their other agent, which is totally fine. Sometimes they just have a number in mind and they're like, if you pay this, we'll sell. It's like, okay.
What has been one of your most out of box or out of just the norm approach to getting somebody to sell, or I guess even just approaching that?
Getting someone to sell. I strongly believe I cannot convince somebody to buy a house if they don't want to buy a house, or sell a house if they don't want to sell a house. So like I really think like if somebody knows I'm a real estate agent, Ivan, if I call you and you know who I am and you just bought a house 4 years ago from me and I'm just calling to check in, it doesn't matter what I say. I can't screw it up if you want to sell. And it doesn't matter what I say. I can't make you want to sell if you don't. Like, I can't convince you to sell your house. Like, maybe the market conditions convince you or anything, but I don't think I or many other people are that good at sales that, like, you could actually be convinced because of, like, the idea that I had or something like that. I think it's mainly just, like, meeting people where they're at and, like, helping them with that. Like usually somebody will be like, hey, I'll call somebody, be like, hey, how you doing? Just checking in on you in the house. It's been 6 months since we talked. I just want to make sure you kids are good. School's going well. Just started back up. How was your summer? Great. How's your house? Are you doing any repairs, big remodels? Kind of giving you recommendations for people to use. And sometimes people will just be like, actually, let me pick your brain right now. What do you think my house would sell for? Or they'll say like, yeah, we want to do this upgrade, but like we don't have the money. I'm like, well, let's look at what your home is worth. Maybe you could go get a home equity line of credit. If your home is worth enough and your mortgage is paid down enough, maybe there's $30,000, $40,000. You could go do that addition if you want. Buying a house, I think, is more. The cool thing about owning a home is so emotional, man. It is so personal, so emotional, so intimate. People want to own a home. Most people think in fact, Austin and I were talking about this today. Most people think they have to put like 20% down on a house. And Austin's like, dude, when I started here, like I realized like I can buy a house with $14,000. I can buy a duplex with $14,000. Like all I need is 3.5%. And he really he's really passionate about getting the word out there because now that he knows that he's buying a duplex, and then he's going to rent out the other side. And so like he wants to like tell the world about that because he thinks he's probably right. The general public thinks that you have to put a ton of money down. Right.
But you don't. That is the misconception. Yeah.
Huge. Everybody, you need a 20% down conventional loan. Like who cares what kind of loan it is?
Let's talk about that. What's one of the biggest fears out there that you see for people that are buying or selling a home? Like what are those things that you're seeing where you're like, I can help you with that because, this is the truth.
Yeah, like the biggest fear that a buyer has is the unknown. Like, what if something goes wrong? But I'd say the biggest unknown fear is they don't want to overpay. And I think the system is somewhat like rigged so that you won't. Because like In order for you to be under contract on a house, you have to have a seller that's willing to sell at a certain price, a buyer that's willing to buy at a certain price, and typically there's two realtors that agree on the price, right? The listing agent wouldn't let the seller sell it if they thought it was worth more money. The buyer's agent wouldn't let their clients pay that if they didn't think it was worth that money. So you already right now have 4 people that believe the home is worth what it is. A definition of market value is what a seller's willing to pay and a buyer's willing to, or what a seller's willing to sell for and a buyer's willing to pay for. But the system requires, if you're getting a mortgage, the system requires that you have a third-party appraiser go out and verify the price so that you don't overpay. So what I generally tell people when they're like, yeah, I think this house isn't worth it, I'm like, that's perfect. That is the best negotiation for me to get the house down, but you have to be willing to go under contract at or close to their list price so that I can have an appraisal done that proves the house is not worth what they're asking for it, and thus they need to reduce the price. So like when people are like, yeah, I don't think it's worth it, I'm like, perfect. Would you buy it if it was cheaper? Yes. What price? Okay, great. That's our target. We need to get them under contract and say, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, we will buy your house for $500,000 because that's what you have it listed for, as long as it appraises. So then they say, yes, we go under contract. If the appraisal comes in low, your lender will not let you buy it under these terms. They either have to reduce the price or you have to bring cash to close to make up the difference, and nobody does that. So guess what's going to happen? The seller's going to have to reduce the price unless they're just really stubborn. And so the biggest fear that somebody has is that they're going to overpay for a house. But I believe that the system really does a good job of making sure that you're not overpaying, because it has to be verified by somebody that I'm not allowed to have contact with. You as the buyer are not allowed to have contact with. The seller is not allowed to have contact with. They work for the bank, which is hired on you, the buyer's behalf. So I don't think that can happen. When you're selling, what's the worst or what's the biggest fear that somebody has when they're selling? It's probably leaving money on the table. It's probably like, I think nobody wants to sell stuff. I think most people understand that like real estate increases in value over a long period of time. So the longer you own something, like the longer it's going to sell for, or the more it's going to be worth. I think right now, like specifically, if we're talking like right now, properties are staying on the market a little bit longer and people are doing price reductions. So like, I think sellers are worried that the housing market is going down. I don't think that it is. I think that people are waiting for the feds to cut rates. They're waiting for rates to go down before they go lock a 30-year mortgage. They don't want to pay $5,000 next year to refinance when they can just wait 30 days. And so I think that's kind of what's going on right now. And in the future, we'll be able to look back and see. But the biggest fear that they have, which I had when I sold properties, like, man, I don't want to undersell it. I don't want to undersell I don't want to leave 20 or 30 grand on the table. Why? I don't want to do that. And it's impossible to know. Our process is a little more thorough than most people. So we try to curb that a bunch by just thinking about like, what would make me feel more comfortable? Okay, if I did X, Y, and Z, I'd probably feel more comfortable. We do X, Y, and Z for all of our clients when they're selling a house so that they feel more comfortable selling it. And they feel like we've done our due diligence and that like, okay, now I feel good about the price that we set.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you just cleared away the fog for everybody about the fears that they might be having, right?
Yeah.
Can we clear some more fog away?
Yes.
About the NAR lawsuit and really get down to what the truth is out there?
Yeah. What's the NAR lawsuit? I'm just kidding. I haven't heard of it. No. All right. So there's really 2 big changes, and that affect buyers and sellers and real estate agents. They're not really that big of a deal. So buyers, so when somebody would list a house, typically the listing commission was 5-6%. Depending on who you're working with, some of them would go lower than 6%. Some of them would go 6 or even I know some people that do higher. But in that 6%, let's say, there was a buyer's agent commission that was like agreed upon by buyer and seller, by seller and listing agent, that like the listing agent was going to pay, let's just say a 3% buyer's agent commission to a buyer's agent, like if they brought a buyer. And that was just like understood. And so like a realtor could look up on the MLS this property and be like, okay, if I bring Ivan and he buys this house, the seller will pay me the fee that like I'm giving, the service that I'm giving to Ivan. That's went away. So like they can still pay the fee. They can't advertise it. So if a realtor calls my office and says, hey, Tim, I saw your listing at such and such, I'm wondering if they're willing to pay a buyer's agent commission. What I understand, which may not, I'm from the research that I've done, from what I understand, my response cannot be yes, and it cannot be no, and it can't be 3% or 2.5%. My response from my office, my team's response is, I can't confirm yes or no. Please write it into your offer and make sure it's your client's best offer. Because what happens now, the second thing is, the first thing is they can't advertise a commission, but they're still legally allowed to pay it. So a seller can still pay a buyer's agent commission, but they can't advertise it on any such forum. The second thing that happened is if you call me and you say, hey, Tim, I saw your listing I'm sitting in front of the house right now. I want you to show it to me. Like a month ago, I'd be like, all right, cool. Like we'll be out and show it to you. We'll be there in 15 minutes. We go into the house, I meet you, kind of the whole thing's like an interview, right? Like you're interviewing to be like, do I like this guy or gal or do I not? Do I want them to help me with my home purchase? And I'm kind of looking at him like, do I think this guy's legit? Like, is he really going to buy? Is he worth my time? Like all this kind of stuff. Well, now that doesn't happen anymore. If you call me on the sign sitting in front of the house, like I want to look at him, like, okay, just we have to have a bit more of a conversation. It's usually best if you come into our office because we've got to sign a document that says that I'm exclusively representing you for a specific period of time. And this is the percentage that I'm going to be paid to represent you when you buy a house. And it doesn't, by the way, it doesn't matter if it has to come from you or the seller, but if the seller's unwilling to pay for it, you're on the hook for it. And you can't buy the house unless you can afford to pay me. So it's not that, like, that makes it sound kind of like it's a big deal, but I'll break it down. Really, shoot. You have to sign an agency agreement establishing what I charge and what you get in return and what the length is before we look at a house.
Sure. I mean, you're just laying it out there at front.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with I've found out since this happened, people don't have a problem with it. They've, everybody thought like, oh my gosh, buyer's agents are going away and nobody's going to hire a buyer's agent anymore. And I'm like, everybody that's called us to buy a house, we've just said, hey, here's what I charge. Here's how long the agreement is for if you buy a house within there. These are the services that you can expect from me and my team. Nobody's had an issue with it. Everybody, people, they want help. Like buying a house is a big deal. We do this every day, so it's easy for us, but it's hard for you because you don't know what not to do. Like, my wife was in a car accident, just for example, and she was not at fault. It was found that the other driver was at fault. It's been 2 years, and for the first 8 months, I was negotiating with the other party's insurance agent, wasn't getting anywhere. Finally called an attorney. I was only going to get a certain amount of money on my own. I was like, it doesn't feel fair. Like, I think I'm going to get more. Even after now hiring this attorney, paying his 30%, I'm still going to double what I would have made on my own. And like, I don't know what he knows. Like, I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah, right.
And I could have been ignorant and thought I made a smoking deal and gotten out of there 8 months ago, but I'm glad I hired a professional and am paying a professional rate, and I don't have to worry about it.
Right. And I like the fact that when you enter a deal like that, all of it's laid out in front of you, right?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like there's nothing's hiding. It's all out there.
Yes.
And that's what a contract is, right?
That's right.
And it's important to have that so everyone knows expectations.
Yeah.
How many of the seller's agents have you ran into that aren't paying the buyer's fee?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we haven't run into anyone that's not willing to pay a fee whatsoever, but most of them are willing to pay 2 to 2.5%. So really can get the deal done. I think most home sellers understand that the old system, it worked. Like, it really worked. And you really, like, the buyers want an agent. So if you aren't willing to pay a buyer's agent fee, I think that like you're going to drastically reduce the amount of buyers that can go there.
So as far as the NAR lawsuit, and as far as if you're a buyer or a seller and you've never dealt with any of it, you don't really have to worry about it other than signing a document going.
You don't. I mean, if you think about it, like when you sell a home, you have to, I think everybody knows you have to sign listing agreement that the person has the right. Like, it's the same thing. Like, signing a listing agreement doesn't mean that you're guaranteeing you're going to sell the house. Right. It just means that, Ivan, you have hired Tim Duncan, and I am the only person that can put a sign in the yard and get paid the commission when you sell your house for a specific period of time. If it doesn't sell in that time, you can choose to extend it or not. The same thing goes, and it's for buyers. Before I can show you a house, we've got to have an outline of like how this looks financially for everybody and what the terms are and what services I'm providing you before we get into this relationship and like somebody has misconceptions about like what was going to happen. So it's really not that big of a deal. Like buyers now just have to have an agreement similar to what sellers have had to have for as long as I've been a realtor.
Now, is there a term on that for the buyer side as well? Is that what you're saying? So for, we sign,
a length.
You're going to help me.
Length, yeah.
Yeah, you can make it a day. You could make it per house. You could make it 6 months. I've got some clients. So one guy's is extremely picky. And I said, look, I don't want to spend a bunch of time trying to keep up on this paperwork. Normally I do 6 months, but I'd like to do it 12 months for you because you said you're really picky and you're going to hold out for the right property, which I'm totally fine doing. I just don't want to forget to extend it in 6 months. He said, no problem. Yep. So I always put in my agreements that people can cancel them at any time at no cost to them.
Gotcha.
It helps me stay true to like the services that I'm offering and remember that I've got to work hard for every single day for every client. Otherwise, like they can leave. And so I've got to earn it every single day. Yeah, but you can do it like, I imagine a lot of people are like, if they're sign calls or they saw the house on Zillow and they don't know me from Adam, they're going to call and be like, hey, I just want to see that one house. Will you just sign an agreement for one house? And I was like, I did that the other day and I was like, yeah. And so, I mean, it makes sense. Probably.
Because I was thinking, if I wanted to see if this was going to be the right agent for me, how does that impact that?
I think like you're not going to have the as much. And I've noticed actually in the last, September 6th? So it was like the 17th or the 12th that it went into effect. So it's 3 to 4 weeks, 2 to 3 to 4 weeks. I've noticed that the number of calls that we get in our office that say like, hey, I'm standing in front of your house or I got your number from a sign in the yard. That's like almost zero now, which tells you that like people aren't calling the listing agent anymore. They're calling the agent that their friend recommended or they saw on a shopping cart or, however they get their information, or they're just don't know what to do and they feel uncomfortable, so they're not calling. But I think like to your point, Ivan, like a sit down with your realtor, I think is just really important. Like whenever we list a house for a seller, the seller expects to sit down and see what we're going to do to market the house. Like they want an hour of my time just going over my service and like what I think is special about the house. And so they have an opportunity to talk. I think buyers like deserve the same thing and should have a presentation and be like, hey, like we care about what you're asking us to help you buy a huge investment. Like it's a big deal. Why don't we show you everything that we offer so you can make a decision on if we're worth it or not? Like, I think like you need to come into my house. Like, I think our policy is going to be like, hey, if you, number one, in order to comply with law, we have to sign an agreement before I see a house. But if you don't have time right now, you can sign the agreement and then come to our office later, but we need to meet so that like you understand what we're doing so we're a good fit for each other.
Yeah, that's the big one, right? You just want to make sure that we're a good fit first, and then it's like, cool, all right, let's sign the agreement for 6 months or whatever it is, and we're good to go. We're on this journey together.
Yeah.
Right? So
if it's not a good fit, it's not fun for anybody.
Yeah.
Like nobody wants to be a part of it. Yeah.
Alrighty, everybody. So we're to the part of the show where we get to know our guests a little bit better. So Tim, are you ready for this?
I'm ready for it.
When you're not at work, what do you like to do?
I play pickleball a couple times a week with a group of guys. They're old men. They're a lot wiser than I am. So I get to hang out with them and play pickleball on a couple different days a week for a couple hours. I've got 3 young girls. One of them is almost 4 years old, so she's just very busy. And we swim a lot. We put a pool in our backyard this last year, so we're in the pool all the time. And I have 2 older girls. 11. They're older to me, 11 and 9. So middle school and 4th grade. So they're active. They're running around playing, riding bikes. We're playing board games, doing crafts and stuff like that. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
It keeps me busy enough.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then with the job, that gives you the freedom to actually be there.
Be at their school events. And,
right.
Yeah, my wife needs to do an appointment. I can shoot home for a little bit and watch the kids. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What was the first career you dreamed of?
First career I wanted to be a professional tennis player. Growing up, I was always told that I had the ability and whatnot if I worked hard enough, but I think that actually stumped me. I think they kind of put a little ego on me and were like, "Oh, I'm pretty good. I don't need to work very hard." I think like LeBron James or Kobe Bryant or someone actually said like, something like that. I can't remember the exact quote, but they basically said like, don't tell a kid how good he is, like quite how good he is. Like make sure that he still knows that he needs to work and try hard. I thought it was all skill and talent and like, okay, I have a God-given gift and I don't have to work that hard at it. And it didn't happen. And I think that's why.
How far did you take it?
My parents sent me to, so I have 3 older brothers, and my dad would always take us to Eugene Swim and Tennis Club. And we go to the old practice courts, and he'd turn on the ball machine and the backboard. And the 2 middle brothers didn't really play much. They just didn't really enjoy it. It wasn't for them. But the older brother and I did, and he and I both played in high school, but I started playing when I was, I think, 3 years old.
Wow.
And I have a 3-year-old right now. I have no idea how my dad, like,
managed to...
Maybe I was just picking up the balls, you know? I don't know. But how hold a racket and hit a ball, I don't think she could do that right now. But I started when I was 3, and for me, I remember, like, it was just time to hang out with my dad, you know? And little boys love their dads, and he would take us there, I think, a couple hours every night. And that was I always looked forward to that. And so then growing up, middle school, I started playing like super competitive tournaments in Oregon, Washington, Idaho, I think a couple in Nevada and like Northern California. And he had a big F-350 with a camper on the back of it. And he would just every weekend, or it probably wasn't every weekend, it's probably like every 2 or 3 weekends, we'd be going around to a new tournament. And I was very competitive about it. And then in high school, my parents sent me over to Saddlebrook Tennis Academy in Orlando, Florida. I think I was there for a summer and got very homesick, hated it. But anyways, I never went to college, but I played for high school and played a ton after college, and then kind of like fizzled out when I met my wife and just didn't have time to play competitively. So now I play pickleball.
Pickleball, I was just saying, you got an outlet.
Thank goodness that guy invented that sport in like 1967 or whatever it was.
Reflecting on your past, what was your earliest memory of home or feeling at home?
Oh, man. My brother will probably laugh at this. My oldest brother, Steve. So the earliest memory I remember, and this is kind of more family stuff, but like this was home. Like we were living at our house on Elysium, 2320 Elysium, believe it or not. I still remember that. And we moved out of there when I was in 5th grade. So I don't know how I remember that. But, and my older brother, 6 years older than me, my 2 middle brothers, they never would let me play with them and their friends. Like they were always like, Tim, get out of here. You know, I'm too young and whatnot. My older brother always included me on stuff, and he would always do like a movie night on Friday nights or something like that, and it was like me and his time. And I remember sitting in like that family room with the TV on, like watching that movie like that, like with him. I really looked up to him, and that was like super cool. Like hanging, that was like family, like that was home.
That's really neat. You're the oldest and the youngest getting that connection.
Yeah, he really kind of took me under his wing and like hung out with me and let me hang out with his. I mean, they're 6 years older. Can you imagine being 14 and you got your 8-year-old brother won't leave you alone, when your friends are over? Like that was him. He always like every time his friends were over, like, and they did the same thing. His friends, like they would always like, hey, bring Tim, like hang out with us. And I was like, but my 2 middle brothers, the brother that's a year and a half older than me and then 4 years older, 4 years was he was just out and about a bunch. But my other brothers, like they didn't exclude me. I don't mean to say they're not bad by any means. I'm not saying that. My other brother just kind of was like always like, hey, come over here, do this. Yeah.
What if that's like an instinct thing, like being the older brother?
He was like, he had to be the protector, right?
Right. Yeah. That's always looking out for his younger brother. That makes total sense.
Yeah, he probably, I bet he did the same thing for like my other 2 brothers, Yeah, and I probably just didn't even notice it.
Oh, it's so cool.
Switching it up a little bit, why do you think people congregate in the kitchen in somebody's house?
Food is love.
Oof.
Yeah.
Food is love, man.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, if you ever want somebody to like agree with what you say, or like if you want someone to listen to you, make them food. Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Food is love.
That's really
like
good.
it's I think that is like something that's like really ordained into our society, that like if somebody gives you food, they're giving you love. I have no idea, like, if it's because, like, you have to have food to eat. Like, what if I give you water or, like, give you fresh air? Like, is that the same thing? But, like, food is, like, seen. Like, have you ever not liked it when somebody gave you food?
Right.
It's true. It's true.
Even it's just the thought, too. Like, even if you don't actually take it.
So it must be something in our DNA or something that, like, when people come over to the house, there's a living room, there's a dining room, there's all these places to hang out, but everybody finds themselves in the kitchen.
Well, now the kitchen and the family room are all together in this like great room thing.
Exactly, right?
Yeah. I mean, do you guys like to me, food is comfort.
Oh, it totally is.
So like if somebody gives me food, they're comforting me.
Yeah.
It's like love, comfort, it's like, man, like my wife makes dinner all the time and I freaking love it. And like, it's so like, I don't like to take the time to cook because it's such a mess and there's so much work to do and I've got to read instructions and men don't like instructions. and like, I will gladly do the dishes afterwards, but like, yeah, it's food is love. Yeah. I think that's why.
I mean, that's me. I'm the cook in our household.
Are you?
And so I don't like following instructions either. I just go with,
You just don't.
Like little this, little of that. We're
Dash
good.
of this.
But yeah, it's like my love language. So yeah, absolutely. It's like I will make food for you.
So
Absolutely.
if your wife cooks for you, like, is that a special treat for you?
It is a special treat for me.
Careful what you say here.
She's listening. So. No, I'm just kidding. No. But it's great. It's great. Sometimes she does, and it's great. It's a nice special treat.
Is it? Do you appreciate
Absolutely.
it? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I love doing it as well.
I couldn't imagine you saying anything other than yes there.
Yes, dear.
Yes, dear.
What is one thing about you that surprises people?
I'm an introvert. Most people think I'm an extrovert, but I actually recharge like on my own time. Yeah.
So you don't have this like charisma all the time, just ready to go.
I do like when I'm in front of.
Sales.
I do like when I'm in front of you, but I think it just like because I didn't get into sales and like this type of an atmosphere until it was 12 years ago. I'm 37, so 25, and so like I think I was always an extrovert. An extrovert means that like I recharge around people.
Off of people.
Yeah. So I think I was an extrovert, and then like slowly, I think over the last 10 years, I think our personalities do change, like with the environments that we're in and like experiences, but like I'm around people and my job requires me to be on the phone with people 24/7, and I love it, but it is exhausting sometimes. Like I'm busy, and so I'm like, sometimes I'll go home and wife makes dinner, kids go to bed, and I'm like, honey, I just need to watch a movie upstairs, like by myself. Like I just need to watch a movie, like, and it's got to be like a gory movie or a horror film. Like I've just got to like sit there and not think about anything or anybody, so most people think I'm like crazy. I have so much energy and passion and stuff like that, but no, I'm an introvert.
I totally relate to that. I worked in the hospitality industry for like 15 years, and I always thought I was an extrovert.
Yeah.
I was just an extrovert like for 10 hours a day or something like that.
It was a customer
because you had to.
And I never realized that I actually need that recharge time.
And all somebody needed to do was cook you a meal.
That was it.
The secret is out. What is the best advice you've ever been given?
So one of my friend's dads, when I was getting into real estate, he said, Tim, if all you did was answer the phone when it rings, you'll be successful. And he was so right. So like I took that, like he probably doesn't remember. The next day he probably didn't even remember he said that to me, right? Like it's just something he said in passing. But he said, he goes, look, all you have to do is answer the phone when it rings. That's it. And like looking, like, they say speed to lead, like speed matters. So like Zillow, if Zillow ever sends leads, they say like, hey, you have like 4 minutes to like connect with this person, otherwise they moved on. It's probably a lot faster. Like if I go on Google and look for something and they don't answer the phone, like within like 4 rings, I'm calling the next door. Like I think it's probably like 15-20 seconds. Like if you don't answer the phone when they call you, you probably have until the next, like you probably have call waiting to get them before and they'll hang.
I mean how long does it take somebody to scroll on a phone? That's probably how fast it
like
is.
you have the swipe done. But so when he said that, like I made it my mantra that like if somebody calls me, I answer the phone. If I can't answer the phone, they get a text message like, hey, I'm busy, I'll call you back as soon as I can. Boom, they stopped searching. Like they were acknowledged. They were acknowledged, like, hey man, what can I help? I'm in a meeting, so sorry I couldn't answer the phone. I'm gonna call you back as soon as I can, probably an hour. I give them an expectation. And that I learned, not in the early days, but like if I couldn't answer the phone, which was hardly ever, then like I returned it as fast as possible. And even if I was like, man, like it's been an hour, I'm sure they found somebody else, or whatever, at least they know Tim Duncan Real Estate, like called them back and followed them through. Because maybe that other realtor's not going to work out or something's going to happen and they need some help.
And looking back on when you first got started, a lot of it was about that, right? It was about getting on it right then and there.
Oh,
right?
my gosh.
Being available.
Dude, when people want to see a house, like most people don't like, here's what happens. People are like, hey honey, like did you see this house on Zillow? Like it's got 4 bedrooms in the backyard that we wanted and like the 2-car garage and it's got RV parking. Oh, I wish we could buy that. And then like they wait 3 or 4 days and then like they get a free 30 minutes away from their kids. And then they call a realtor like, hey, we happen to be like in front of this house. Can you come meet us right now? And like they don't start by this. Like when they call you, like they want you now.
Right.
They're not like, can we schedule something for next week? Yeah. Like people always ask me like, hey, what's your next week look like? I'm like, bro, I'm scheduled like 24 to 48 hours in advance. Next week, there is 0 in my schedule. But like ask me Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and it'll be busy. But like people and I'm the same way. When I go look for a new car, like I'm not trying to schedule a drive next week. I'm trying to schedule it like right now. If you can't help me, like I don't care. I'm gonna go to the next guy. Yeah. Again, I'm gonna look for someone that's very passionate.
Yeah. Tim, you lived here your whole life.
Yes.
You're gonna have an incredible answer for this. Next and final question.
Pressure.
What do you consider a hidden gem in Eugene? It could be a restaurant, it could be a park, it could be an event, it could be just some other small business in town, it could be a historical site, it could be anything like that. But if somebody came to town and you're like, you have to go to this place, you have to check out this location, you got to do this thing, because this is what I consider a hidden gem in Eugene.
Papa's Pizza Barbecue Chicken. Mic drop.
Enough said.
That's it, man.
I've actually been to that one.
Oh yeah,
You've been to that one.
We joke because every time we ask this question and somebody brings up a restaurant of some sort, Ivan's like, "I've never been there," and I'm like, "Dude, how have you not been there?" And
Dude,
now this is the first one where he's like, "I have been there."
It's so good, and their barbecue chicken is just so good. Even if you don't think you want it, if you order it, you will eat the whole thing.
Oh man,
it's so freaking good.
That's a good one. I have not had that, so I'm gonna order that the next time I'm craving pizza.
Dude.
Kind of our last wrap up here, and thank you for your time here today. What is a message that you have for people living in our community? I mean, is there something you want to leave them with? It could be a call to action, something to ponder. Is there anything that comes to mind where you're like, I want to share this with our community?
Yeah, so work related about buying a house. So Austin, we did a home buying seminar last night, actually here, and it was pretty good. Most people were like, even the guy, like there was a guy that came and he didn't expect to be convinced of anything. But at the end of it, he's like, wait, you mean I can buy a house with 3.5% down? We're like, and we had a lender here, and she's like, yeah, there's programs for 3.5% all the way up to 20, but there's actually a USDA program that you can buy for 0%. My point being is Austin and I got to talking yesterday and today, like after that event. Most people think that they have to put a lot more money and it's a lot more expensive to buy a house than it is. That's what Austin thought. That's what this guy last night thought. And so my recommendation to people would be like, if you want to buy a house, I know it's really scary to go talk to a lender, and it's really scary to call a realtor because you don't want to be rejected. You don't want them to say like your credit sucks or your income isn't good enough. I mean, that's kind of humiliating, like to hear those things. Reach out to us or somebody that you trust, and the right person should be very sensitive about these things and give you a path to buy a house if you're not capable of it. But I would say 8 out of 10 times, people can buy a house when they didn't think that they could. And the only reason they don't own a house right now is because they're too afraid to go ask. And so I would recommend you to like kind of pull your pants up a little bit, like give yourself a little courage, call somebody and say, I'm really freaking nervous to be asking this question because it scares me. And I need somebody that's really sensitive to that and can look at my stuff and either tell me if I can buy a house, and if I can't, give me a plan to buy one in 6 or 12 or 18 months. And tell me the steps that I need to take, and it's very simple. They will give you, if you follow these things, you will be in a house. And so most people though, like they think it costs $50,000, $100,000 to buy a house. It doesn't. You could buy, like my associate agent that was here last night, he goes, the first house I bought was in Junction City with the USDA loan, and I bought it with $500 in my pocket. He spent $500 to buy a house, and then he sold it for like $30,000 or $40,000 more a couple years later. Profit. 30. Can you imagine making an extra 20 grand a year and you don't have to work for it?
Yeah.
That's home ownership.
That's proof. And this is a powerful message to folks saying, pick up the phone.
Yeah, and start with a realtor, start with a lender, whatever you know and feel comfortable with. The realtor will be able to refer you to a lender. The lender will be able to refer you to a realtor. So that would be my message.
Awesome. And so if people want to learn a little bit more about you or your business, how can they get a hold of you?
541-284-3741 or timduncanre.com.
Awesome. We'll make sure we put a link to that in the show notes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Dude, that was really motivating. It made me want to go and buy a house. It made me want to go and buy an investment property. Heck, it made me want to go and get my real estate license. It's funny because I've heard of this real estate license test and how they practice and study, and it just sounds like this crazy hard thing. And it sounds like it is this crazy hard thing.
Yeah, crazy hard thing, of course.
8 tries, but I like that he mentioned that it has nothing to do with real estate. It is just like this gatekeeper from just having everybody be real estate agents. But just having that real estate license isn't enough to call you a real estate agent. You still have to be willing to put in the grit.
Yeah. Do you have the success and the hustle and the hard work behind it to show that, hey, I am currently selling homes and people are happy with them?
Yeah. And I liked his perspective on it when he was talking about the employee that wanted to join his team, and one of the first exercises that he had to do was move everybody from his contacts. Even just hearing that, I was like, oh man, how do you start a book of business from your contacts?
That's where it starts. The people you know.
Exactly.
And it makes total sense on why you would do that. And I could understand maybe the fear that people have when it comes to not wanting to reach out to everybody you know because you feel like it's going to be salesy or annoying. But in reality, what it is it's actually just helping people.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you're not trying to pitch your services to your friends and family.
Well, you got to even think about if I was thinking about buying a house, would I rather go to somebody that I know already, that I could ask those uncomfortable questions, or somebody that I don't know at all? So that might, there's already a little bit of trust in there that's already built up just because you know that person. And, just like Tim was saying, this can be a scary process. This will be the biggest purchase that a lot of people will make in their life. But even the way that he brought up, he was just like, don't make it salesy. Just reach out and let them know that you're just doing real estate.
Yeah, right. It's as simple as that.
Keep it top of mind.
And wow. It's about, who knows you, right?
Big time.
And I think one of the important takeaways from that is that sometimes you got to do those scary things.
Yeah.
And it's great that he had this kind of support network that he was building for his team, where it's like, hey, once you send the word out there and somebody comes back and says, hey, I'm ready to buy a house or sell a house, I am here for you to put together all the paperwork, to show you how it works. But it's kind of hard to do that if you don't have anything.
Yeah, no, it was great having him here. Definitely somebody that I could see the passion right there.
Totally.
So whenever he was saying, look for somebody with a passion, I was just like, all right, dude, I'll just call you.
Honestly, we felt that before we even hit record. So,
absolutely.
That was the whole reason that he was here today. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, so great episode. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any feedback or anything, throw it in the comments below. Of course, check out our other episodes, and we'll see you on the next one.
See you on the next one. I always have to get the last word.
This episode of the Eugene Morning Hustle podcast was brought to you by the Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce and sponsored by Ivan Torres of Business Block Studios and Brandon Miller Voiceover. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel where you get your podcasts and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn to stay in the know. If you have any questions, topics, or guests you'd like us to dive into, send us a voice message on the Eugene Chamber Instagram page, and we'll feature you and your question on a future episode. Or shoot us an email at podcast@eugenechamber.com. Till next time, Eugene.